earlier, Pastor Alex had led us in praying for the visa of Dr. Achik. Please do continue to pray for that. And as we pray for that, I would like also to request and suggest that you also pray for the Christians of Indonesia. I'm pretty sure that many of you are aware that Muslims are now up in arms against the Christians, and they are very violent. In fact, they are demanding that the governor, Ahok, he was the one who said something that the Muslims did not like. He is a Christian, and a Chinese Christian. And so because of that, the Muslims, they are now violently demanding that he must be put to jail. So let's continue to pray for the Christians of Indonesia as well. I have known many Christians in my life. Hundreds, thousands of them. But I have yet to meet a Christian who would dare say, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, but I don't love him. On the contrary, most, if not all of the Christians that I have met, they would be quick to say that they love the Lord. If you ask them, do you love the Lord? They will promptly say, yes. If you ask them, how do you know that you love the Lord? They will tell you the many things, religious things that they do in church and outside the church to prove that they love the Lord. I read my Bible every day. I go to church every Sunday. I give to the poor. I teach Sunday school. I attend discipleship, whatever. However, if you look at their life carefully, you will discover that many of them, you doubt if they truly love the Lord. Probably, yes, they do love the Lord. However, as you look at their life, you discover that their love for God is pretty shallow. You discover that their love for God is very selective. If the sun is bright and the weather is good, they love the Lord. If things are going well and they are living in their comfort zone, they love the Lord. If the Lord does not rock the boat and does not demand any sacrifices from them, they love the Lord. However, when things are going wrong, when the Lord puts them, through trials and testings, when, things are not going their way, a lot of times, their I love yous become, why me, Lord? A lot of times, their profession of love will just burst like bubbles before your eyes. Many Christians remind me of the story of a young man. He was courting a girl and they were in a relationship. And he always professed love, passionately, romantically to this girl. But one day the girl sprained, her ankle. And she requested that the boy take him to see a doctor on Saturday, his day off. And the boy immediately said, no, not on Saturday. Because Saturday is the time that I play golf, with my boss. And the girl, she was very disappointed, but she said, okay, how about Saturday afternoon, after you have your game? The boy thought for a moment and said, okay, I'll take you, after the game. I will try to borrow the car of my dad. However, if the car is not available, you have to go by yourself. Because, going there by bus is pretty difficult, inconvenient for me. This time, the girl was not only disappointed, she was very hurt. So very curtly, she said, how can I go by myself? I sprained my ankle, I cannot walk. And the boy said, oh, okay. In that case, I will fetch you Saturday afternoon. So the girl was so happy. However, before the girl could even smile, the boy said, I will fetch you Saturday afternoon if it does not rain. A lot of times, that is how we treat the Lord. That is how we relate to the Lord. We are fast to proclaim that we love the Lord. By all means, if we really love the Lord, say so. However, It is my prayer that our love for God will truly be sincere, deep and not shallow, complete and not selective. At all times, in all occasions, let us love the Lord. Because of that, because we need to develop that kind of love for the Lord, this morning we are going to study Genesis chapter 22. Genesis chapter 22 contains a story, a very familiar story that all of us have known. Some of us probably have heard this since we were young. This story is a story about the incredible love and faith of Abraham for God. And this morning, although this is a very familiar story, we are going to look at it in the hope that we will learn some lessons and emulate Abraham so that we can be strong in our love and in our faith for the Lord. You see, as Christians, we must love the Lord. We must love the Lord. It is a command from the Lord. In fact, Jesus said, the greatest commandment of all is to love the Lord our God with all our heart. Not only that, God Himself desires that we, His children, love Him. That is why if you look at Revelations, He rebuked the Christians in Ephesus because they have lost their love for Him. And then if you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 16, the Apostle Paul even said, cursed is the man who does not love the Lord. Therefore, it is our desire, it should be our desire to grow in our love for the Lord. And so this morning, let us look at this passage again. If you are not familiar with the story, I will request that you open it once again to Genesis chapter 22. If we look at this passage, we will discover that there are at least 4 things that we can do, that we must do in order to grow our love for God, as well as to, to prove to ourselves that we truly love God. For me, these 4 things are like essential ingredients that are needed when you cook, when you bake. When you cook something, when you bake something, there are essential ingredients that you cannot do without. Now, these 4, I believe, are 4 ingredients that we must have if we are going to develop our love for God. First thing, in order for us to grow our love for God and to prove that we truly love God, we must pray for grace, we must learn to submit to the tests and the trials that God puts us through. As Christians, we have to understand this. Our God is not a hurtful God. Our God is not a cruel God. He does not delight in seeing us in pain. However, because He loves us, because He wants us to grow in our relationship with Him, in our love and our faith for Him, a lot of times, He would put us through trials, testings. And these trials and testings, sad to say, sometimes have to be hard and difficult. In fact, a lot of times, it comes in series, one after the other. And the reason, again, is not because, God is a sadist, He's a masochist, He delights in seeing us, cringing in pain. No, it is because He loves us and He wants us to grow in our relationship with Him. And because of that, He has to put us through difficult trials and tests. Now, for us to understand, why that is necessary, allow me to ask you some questions. Question number 1. If God says to you, starting this week, it's time you come to church. You have to give me 10 pesos. Every Sunday. You don't have to give your tithes and offerings anymore. You just give 10 pesos every time you come to church. Drop it in the offering box. Now, let me ask you, if God asked you to give Him 10 pesos a week, would you do it? If God asked you to give Him 10 pesos a week, would you do it? Now, I don't think I need to wait for your answers. I can read your mind. By all means. 10 pesos is such a small amount, it's chicken feed. You can easily afford 10 pesos. In fact, you would clap and applause, wow, 10 pesos. It's just like a drop of water in the Pacific Ocean. So you would give. Now, let me ask you a second question. If you give 10 pesos a week to God, does that prove that you love Him? If you give Him 10 pesos, just 10 pesos, you're raking in thousands and millions, giving Him 10 pesos, does that prove that you love Him? Certainly no. I don't know what your answer is, but for me, that does not prove that you love God. In fact, that does not prove anything. As I said, 10 pesos is just like a drop of water in the Pacific Ocean. You won't feel it at all if you give 10 pesos, even 20 pesos. Now, here is the third question. If God requires you to give Him 10,000 pesos each time you come to church, will you give Him? Not 10 pesos this time, but 10,000 pesos. So, 40,000 pesos a month. Again, I don't think I need to wait for your answer. I think some of you would, but many of you would not. Some of you are unable because probably you don't have that much money. But for those of you who are able, who can afford it, I'm pretty sure that many of you would not do it. Or if you do it, you would do it grudgingly. You do it grudgingly. 40,000 pesos, you can buy a lot of things. You can send your children to school. 40,000 pesos probably a month would, take up a significant percentage of your income. But let's say God gives you 100,000 pesos a month. So you still have 60,000 pesos. Would you give it? Probably not as well. Now, through this illustration, I think you get the point. Why does God have to require us at times to go through testings and trials that are difficult? It is only through hard and difficult tests that our love for Him will grow, that we can prove to ourselves and to Him that we truly love God. So that is why, although it is not desirable for us, to be in trials that are difficult, that are insidious, and that are hard. But sometimes God really requires that because there's no other way that we can grow our love for Him, that we can grow in our faith to Him, unless we go through such a test. As I was looking at our passage today, I discovered that was exactly what God was doing to Abraham. Look at verse 1. Verse 1 tells us, one day, after some time, after the birth of Isaac, the Lord put him to a test. And mind you, the test was extremely difficult. Something that most of us would think is incredible, unreasonable, unnecessary, impossible. He asked him to offer his one and only son. Now, let me show you how difficult, how incredible that requirement from God is. First of all, we have to understand, God asked him to offer Isaac, but Isaac was his own flesh and blood. Isaac was not an adopted son. Isaac was not a son born of a surrogate mother. Unlike his, half-brother, Ishmael, Isaac, was not a bastard. He was not an illegitimate child. He was a legitimate son of Abraham, born of a legitimate wife, his own flesh and blood. Secondly, Isaac was Abraham's long-awaited son. They had waited for him for many years. The Lord gave them, Sarah and Abraham, Isaac, after they had waiting for a long period, but they were already well advanced in years. I know that some of you you are married for some time and you don't have a child, you are worried. So you go to Singapore, you go to US, and hopefully you'll be able to create a son or a child. And if you have that child, I'm sure you'll pamper, you'll love him. So Abraham, after waiting for so long, had a son. And during the waiting period, they struggled, they suffered, they even sinned against God, by taking things into their own hands. So it was, really a hard time for them. Now they have a son. And God said, no, give it back. And then thirdly, you have to understand, Isaac was not an ordinary son. He was God's promised son to him. God, said, I'm going to give you a son and you'll become a great nation. And through that great nation, you're going to bless other nations as well. You're going to establish a name for yourself. You're going to be great. So now here's the son. And God said, give it back. And then one more thing. Isaac, you have to understand, at that time, he was Abraham's only descendant. Now, we all know the story. When they were waiting, they struggled, so they took things into their own hands. So Sarah said, why don't you have a son with my servant Hagar? So they did, and here comes Ishmael. So now they have an illegitimate child at home. But God said, no, that is not the one. So by God's grace, God gave them Isaac. Now if you look at the preceding passage, Genesis chapter 1, after Isaac was born, and when he was weaned, the family celebrated. Abraham gave a feast. Now, you have to understand, in those days, when babies are weaned, they give a party. Today, we give parties when our babies is 1 year old, 4 years old, whatever. But in those times, they give a feast when babies are weaned from the mother's milk. Why? Because during those days, life was extremely harsh and difficult. So if a baby is able to survive, the breastfeeding time and become stronger and, independent, they celebrate for two reasons. Number one, they believe this child is going to survive life because they survived as a baby. Secondly, this child, especially if the child is a son, this child now will carry the name of the family. He is now the heir, the inherit, the descendant. So that was exactly what happened. Abraham celebrated because Isaac was already weaned. But then during the party, the illegitimate brother laughed, at Isaac. So Sarah was so angry. Sarah requested Abraham to cast him out. Initially, Abraham would not do it. But God said, let him go. So Abraham put out Hagar as well as Ishmael. So the only one left in the house is Isaac. Abraham at that time has only one descendant. But God said, give it back. Wow, that's incredible. That's extremely difficult. We may have gone through trials that are very difficult, but I think this would not, ours would not count, when compared against Abraham's. Just imagine, those of you who are parents, even if you have 4 children, listen, give me one. I don't think you will. I had 2. And if the Lord asked for one, to be burned as offering, I don't think I can. But look at Abraham. Because of his love for God, he went through the trials. He endured the trial and he came out victorious. Are you in deep trouble today? Is God bringing you, through some deep and dark valley? Are the trials that are coming into your life coming one after the other? Do not try to wiggle out of it. Do not resent it. Do not even doubt God. I don't say you have to be happy about it, but by the grace of God, because of your love for Him. Go through it, trust in Him. Do not even fear. Do not even, fret or be anxious. God will see you through. Be like Abraham, and your love for Him will grow. Your love for God will grow, and you'll be able to prove that you really love God. Now, there's a second thing that you need to do. For you to grow your love and to prove that you really love God, submit to the steps and the processes that He has ordained. In other words, when God puts you through testings and trials, you have to be faithful, you have to follow wholeheartedly. You cannot say, yes, Lord, I will go through the trials, but I will do it my way. In my own time, on my own terms, whenever I want to do it. You cannot say, yes, Lord, and then you try to find shortcuts. You try to find excuses. You try to, cut short the trial. If you really love the Lord, and you really want your love for Him to grow all the more, go through every step that God requires. I know it's not going to be easy, but that is the only way for you to grow in your faith and in your love for the Lord. I remember when we were studying at PSOB, we once attended a family ministry class, and the teacher was Dr. Peter Au. Some of you may know him. He was the president of PSOB at that time, an American Chinese. And in our family ministry class, he gave us a tip. Those of you who are married, you may want to try this. He said, if you want to prove that your spouse loves you, tonight in the middle of the night while he or she is sleeping, snoring, wake him up. And then ask him to go down to the kitchen and get you a glass of hot milk. However, he said, before you go to sleep, make sure that there's no hot water in the kitchen. And then make sure that the milk powder is not, just out there. It's hidden somewhere, in the cabinets. And then ask him to go down and get you a glass of hot milk. He said, if your spouse really loves you, he will be, okay, he will go down. And then, when he returns, he will bring you a glass of hot milk. Not cold milk. Not water. Walang hot milk, water na lang. Not juice or soft drinks. He will get you the hot milk that you want. Okay, you may try that tonight. Just don't tell your spouse that I told you that. I find that what he said to be words of wisdom. Because you see, if you really love someone, you will do everything that you can to fulfill, the desire of that person to the death. And that's a problem with many of us Christians. We say we love the Lord, but we take shortcuts. If the Lord says, give me 10,000 pesos, okay, 9,000 na lang, Lord. If the Lord says, I want you to teach Sunday school for 10 years, 1 year lang, Lord. Or, if the Lord says, give me your son, I want him to be a missionary. Daughter na lang, I need the son to do business with me. Or, Lord, not my son, my mother-in-law. However, if you look at our passage today, you discover Abraham was totally different. Totally different. The demand of the Lord was incredible. Really, really incredible. Not only was the demand of a son incredible, but if you read the Bible carefully, you discover the steps that he had to take was also incredibly difficult. Take a look at this. God demands that Abraham was to offer his son personally. God did not say, call a servant, take your son, into Mount Moriah. But God said, take your son. God did not say, you call one of the elders, in the town. Abraham was very influential. Ask one of the elders to offer your son, or one of the priests to offer your son. Read the Bible carefully. The Bible said, take your son, your only son, and go to Mount Moriah. He had to do it personally. Wow. Secondly, Abraham was to kill and burn his son on the altar. He was to offer him as a burnt offering. In those days, when you offer a burnt offering, you have to kill and then slaughter and burn. It would probably be easier if God says, take your son, Isaac, leave him at the foot of Mount Moriah, and take it from there. Or, take your son to Mount Moriah. Along the way, I will ask a terrorist to snatch him away. That would probably be easier. But the Lord said, take your son there, burn him, as an offering. And Abraham was to offer a son that he had come to love. You have to understand, Isaac at that time was not a baby. If the Lord says, give me your baby, hard as it may, probably that would be easier. Especially, baby, you don't probably have no deep attachment yet. No. But God did not ask for a baby. You have to understand, Isaac was not an abnormal child that, that was unwanted. No. Isaac was a very obedient son, a very good son. He had lived with them a number of years, and they had come to love him. Abraham and Sarah had come to love him. In fact, if you look at the Bible, look at verse 2. The Lord himself knows that they love him. That is why the Bible said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Wow. You have to give a son that you love. And then, you have to understand this. It's so difficult for him to offer because because Isaac at that time was already a mature adult. Most Bible scholars would estimate that the age of Isaac at that time would be about 25 years old. Somewhere between 25 and 30 years old. He's not a, stupid boy who just follow the crowd. He was already an adult who can reason with you. An adult who can resist you. In fact, if Isaac, wrestled with his dad, his dad cannot overcome him. His dad was already over 120 years old. So how can you win over someone, 25, 30 years old? No way. But God said, do it. So you see, not only the offering is difficult, but the steps were very difficult. However, if you look again at Abraham, he followed faithfully. So next time when you are in a trial, when the Lord demands or requires something of you, check your attitude. Can I really, follow the Lord to the dot? Check the specifics of God's demand, and then check if you are willing and able, to follow through and through. Check the price that you have to pay, and then see to it that you pay, to the last centavo. If you do that, I assure you, your love for Him will grow, and you can prove to yourself, you can prove to God that you truly, truly love Him. To grow your love and to prove that you love God, submit to His authority, submit to His will with unconditional obedience. When I read this passage, I really, really find this passage story very incredible. In fact, honestly, my original title for this morning's sermon was Incredible. Why is this incredible? First of all, the demand of God was incredible. It was incredibly harsh. Give me your son. Not give me your money, give me your son. Incredible. And secondly, we have just said, The steps, the processes were incredibly difficult. But more than that, I find this story very incredible because the response of Abraham was incredible. He responded with absolute obedience. Take a look at this. When the Lord demanded that he give his son, he obeyed without question. Without question. I want you to take a look at verse 2. Verse 2, God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, go to the region of Moriah, sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain that I will show you." Now, what's next? You read through the next verses, you will not see any word of complaint. You will not see any question. You will not see any hesitation. No question. He obeyed God without question. He obeyed God without hesitation as well. Look at verse 3. I love verse 3. It says, "Early the next morning, Abraham loaded up his donkey, took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out." Early the next morning. Why early the next morning? Probably, the Lord gave him the command, in the afternoon or whatever. But early the next morning, because I believe he was afraid that Sarah, would stand in the way. You know how mothers are. No. Don't sacrifice my son. If you want to sacrifice yourself. Early the next morning, before he gets too busy. "Oh no, I have this business to do. I have that business to do." Before he procrastinates. And, before it gets too hot. And, he will say, bukas na lang. Early the next morning, he did not hesitate, he went. He obeyed the Lord without faltering. Verse 3 and 4, if you read it carefully, you'll find something very incredible. It says, "On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place at a distance. And he said to his servants, 'Stay here. While I and the boy go there, we will worship and then come back.'" You have to understand, they had to travel at least 2 days. I don't know what went through his mind, but I could just imagine. Those 2 days that they were traveling were probably the longest days in his life. I'm very sure if you are a parent, your heart will be breaking to pieces. You'll be crying inside. You don't want your son to know. It would be incredibly sad, those 2 days. And in those 2 days, he had many chances to turn back. Ayaw ko na. And then on the 3rd day, wow, the mountain is there. Now, totoo na to. But he did not turn back. I remember when my dad passed away, a few years back, we were very sad. During the week, we were very sad. But let me tell you, on the last day, that was the saddest. When we were, burying him, we knew this is the final goodbye. And I believe Abraham at that time, when he saw the mountain, he said, "Oh no." But he did not falter. He did not turn back. He could have, but he did not. He obeyed God, without wavering. Look at verse 6 to 8. When Abraham and Isaac were going up the mountain, his son asked a question. This was a very sensible question, but let me tell you, it was a very emotional question. "Dad, here's the fire, here's the wood, where's the lamb?" If you were Abraham, how would you answer it? How would you feel? If me, I would not know what to answer. Probably I would cry out. I would just break down. Where's the lamb? Or probably I would just say, "Son, here's the story. I've been keeping this from you, but here's the story. So how do you decide?" I will let him decide. If he says no, I'll say, "God, I want to sacrifice, but he doesn't want. It's not my fault. But no, he did not do it. He said, son, the Lord will provide. Let's go. So they continued on. He did not waver in his decision. And then one more thing. He obeyed God without omission. You know, as I mentioned earlier, he obeyed God to the dot. I love verses 9 and 10. Really. Abraham, when they were there, Abraham built an altar. He arranged the wood on it. He bound his son, laid him on the altar on top of the wood, take out his knife. To the dot. No addition, no subtraction. Everything that was required, he did it. That's incredible. That really is. You know, when we obey God, we have to obey Him faithfully and thoroughly. And let me tell you, that is not always easy. Right now, I'd like to share with you, a personal experience, a personal story, a testimony. Now, this is not a very positive one, but I want to share so that you will kind of understand what it means. Probably I've shared this before. I've been here 30 years, and I've told all the stories that I have. But anyway, when we were in the seminary, Suzanne at that time, she was in a class called Cults and Heresies. I was not in the class. That it was not required of our degree, but she was. And one Sunday, their teacher required them, to go to the different pseudo-Christian churches, the cult and heretic churches, to observe, to understand their theology, the Iglesia de Cristo, Mormons, whatever. So one Sunday, I accompanied her to a Seventh-day Adventist church in Caloocan, near Monumento. And the preacher that day was one of the elders of the church. And he was preaching about salvation and eternal life. While he was preaching, I was so, uneasy. I was so uneasy, not only because he was preaching false doctrines, heretic, talagang out of the world. He invented his own, salvation story. But not only that, the Holy Spirit was prompting me to go and confront him. And as I was there, I was saying to myself, this is not my business. I don't belong to this church. I'm just here as an observer. In fact, I said, I'm not supposed to be here. This is Suzanne's assignment, not my assignment. But the Holy Spirit was prompting me so strongly. After the service, I took a deep breath, went to the man, and talked to him. Up front, I told him, what you preach is not biblical. And then I shared with him, the gospel story according to Jesus Christ. I was expecting him to be angry. But praise the Lord, he was not angry. In fact, he was so amazed. And he told me, how about next week you come and preach to the congregation? At that time, the Holy Spirit was again prompting me, yeah, go. But I said no. That's my failure. I said no. Because at that time, I was really thinking about the inconvenience. I have to come back next week. Throughout the week, I'm so busy, I have so many assignments to do, so many term papers, oral reports to do. And I said, no. And I was already thinking about what if I come back and this is just a trap. And all the theologians will be there and they're going to argue, all this what ifs. And I said no. To my regret, even to this day, I said no. I told the man, thank you, shook his hand and left immediately. I obeyed the Lord halfway. Not to the dot. I crossed one bridge, but I did not cross the second bridge. That reminds me, of what David Russell, the Scottish musician, he once said, these are words of wisdom. He said, the hardest thing to learn in life is to know which bridge to cross and which bridge to burn. The hardest thing to learn in life is to know which bridge to cross and which bridge to learn. That day, I crossed one bridge, but I burned the other. But if you look at Abraham, he crossed all the bridges that God asked him to. It was an incredibly hard assignment, but he went all the way. One more thing. If you want to grow your love and prove that you love God, submit to His plans and purposes with steadfast faith. In other words, this is what I want to point out to you. We have to understand that love is not something emotional. It is not something that you just suddenly feel. Love is not, something that is born of a commitment. I commit that I want to love God, and then boom, tomorrow you love God. No. Love is always born of knowledge and of faith. If I were to love someone, I must know that person, and I have trust in that person. A lot of people, especially young people, they talk about love at first sight. Sorry, I don't agree with that. And as I read the Bible, I don't see, the basis for love at first sight. What we're feeling is not love at first sight, but infatuation at first sight. Or attraction at first sight. For it to be true love, it has to be born of knowledge. I know this person, I know who he is, I know what he stands for, I know that he is worthy. And then I trust him, and then I begin to grow in love. So, you have to understand, why is it that Abraham loved the Lord so much? It was because of his faith in God. He knew God all the way from his life, and because he knows God, he trusts Him. That is why, if you look at Hebrews chapter 11, in talking about this incident, the author of Hebrews says, by faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up his son Isaac. It was by faith. It was not by love. It was an expression of his love, but by faith, he offered up his son. Yes, because Abraham has faith, his faith tells him, God is all-wise. I don't understand what this is all about. I don't understand why He asked me to give my only son. But He is too wise to commit any mistake. He is too wise. He knows why He asked me to do this. His faith tells him that God is good. I may not see anything good about this, but God is good. At the end of the day, what will come out will be good for me, good for my son, good for the kingdom of God. His faith tells him that God is sovereign. He believes that God is all-powerful. In due time, God will provide the lamb. That is why he told his son, God will provide. And he even believed that if God did not provide, and I had to kill my son, God can resurrect my son if He wants to. He is sovereign. He is sovereign. He is not sovereign only, He is powerful. He and He alone can command me. He and He alone can command the circumstance. He is sovereign. He is powerful. And because he trusts Him, because he knows Him, because he has faith in God, he was able to do what he was supposed to do. So this morning, I hope that this story of Abraham that we have heard so many times would truly encourage us to love Him more. And may the Lord enable us to follow the principles and grow our love for Him. In closing, I want us to sing a song. Have that on the way. This song will express, what and how we need to respond to God when we are being tested. And this song, by the way, is also the theme song of our mission conference that will start next week. Let's sing this all together.